Hi, everyone. Welcome to Soul Creativity. I'm Naven, and I'm really excited to have our guest this evening, Jenny Lincoln. She's going to be giving us a really interesting talk. So, hola, Jenny. How are you doing this evening? Well, it's evening where I'm at. I'm not sure what time it is.
No,
For
it's
you.
evening. It's
Is
evening here in Mexico. So, hola, chica.
it?
I'm well, chilly but well.
Oh, that's good. Well, it's good you're well. I like the chilly weather, so you may be a warm weather.
I'm actually happy with both. But it warms my heart to be here with you tonight. So, thank you very much for the invite to come on. I'm
Well, I'm
really
so
looking forward
glad
to
you
our
were
chat.
able to do this, and we're so glad to have you. You have so many interesting things to talk about, Jenny. One of the things when you and I were talking before that always interests me is how we have three centers of intelligence and
Yes.
how we, are really taught to only make use of just the mind. So I'm wondering
Mm.
if you can open up the discussion with talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. Thanks, Nathan. So, look, it's interesting, isn't it, that we're taught everything is mind based.
Mhm.
And, particularly when you're working in the creative space, you actually need to get out of your head and into your heart and connect with the other intelligence centers. So, there are three intelligence centers: the mind, the heart, and the intuition. And, it's interesting. We tend to pay homage and honor
Mhm.
and idolize the mind. And we think that that's the superior intelligence center. And a lot of the times that's where, I think that's where most people operate from. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what you're actually doing is it's kind of like listening to mono sound because you have two other magnificent centers to draw from. So I kind of I have a little analogy, I suppose. I like to compare the mind as the command center, and then the heart is like our harmonizer. It is the thing that harmonizes us, and it's our central source of power because it's our most powerful chakra. And then our intuition is our internal guidance system, and so it's really our intuition, or the gut response that everyone would have had nudges from and had the experience of when you don't follow the nudge, what happens. And so it's kind of interesting when you realize that the actual internal guidance system is your intuition. And, whereas we tend to think that our guidance system is our mind, when really that is, to me, that's the command center. And yeah, so when we operate from all three and we have alignment of all three, it becomes a whole different way of experiencing life, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think that if we operate from all three centers with the realization that the heart is the powerhouse,
Mm,
I think, it's easy to see why our lives would change by
absolutely.
operating that way. And I was also thinking when we were talking before, you had mentioned how the mind doesn't really like to be repurposed. And so I really like that wording. And I was wondering if you could talk about what you meant by that and how
Yeah.
it actually affects our like perspective and,
Mm.
maybe keeps us from reaching our goals, our
Yeah,
transformative goals.
it can. Our mind, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I'd love the audience to let us know in the comments below. Are you the master of your mind, or does your mind master you? Because it's interesting. People talk about mind mastery, but a lot of times I actually see the fact that the mind is the master. And what does that look like to people when their mind is the master? I think that can be, I mean, there's lots of examples, but when you're run by that internal chatter, when your inner critic comes into play and says, Do you really think you can do that? Have you got a right to do that? Is that something you're good at? Maybe you actually need to do something else, or you need to do some more work before you jump in and do that. And so you get that whole reactive mind chatter that talks you out of doing the very thing your heart and soul wants you to do. So if you have experiences of that, let us know. I'd love to know where that's playing out for you. And that's a really good cue and clue that you are being mind-led. And so what you want to do is, it's kind of interesting. If you want to just to see how you can get a different response when you think about a problem or a challenge that you're facing, or a decision that you're trying to make, and you ask yourself, let's think of a situation. Do you have a decision that you're ruminating over at the moment, Naaman?
I have a lot of them.
Can we use you as a guinea pig?
You can use me as a guinea pig. And one of them is about getting back out into the workforce to kind of supplement as I grow my like transformative business. And this has been coming up for a few years, back and forth and back and forth. So I'm facing it again, and I'm sure I've been doing a lot of the mind.
Yes. Okay.
Letting
So
it control it.
awesome. Oh, I love this. So, so this is an example of how you can see whether you've got alignment with you across your three intelligence centers, and then I will come back to answering that repurposing, okay? Because that will flow out of this little demonstration. So, when you ask yourself the question, when you say the statement, because it's best to actually say a statement when you're checking in. So what we're going to do is we're going to get you to check in with all three intelligence centers and see whether you get a no, yes, no, or yes or a no from each of those intelligence centers when you say a particular statement. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, so you want like an affirming or a non-affirming answer, right? So let's just think about, I want to get the question that feels right for you, but why don't we just start with something like, I need to go back and supplement my income, or something like that. What's a statement that feels right for you words wise?
Yeah, the supplement the income part is good. So I guess what we're trying to figure out is the best way to do that.
Okay, so you need to phrase it so that it's a yes no answer. Okay. So something like, I need to go back to work and supplement my income. All right.
So I was thinking, is it in my best interest to go back?
Okay, so make it an affirmation. So it is in my best interest to go back to work and supplement my income, or
Okay.
So say that and allow your focus to be in your head.
Okay, it is in my best interest to go back to work and supplement my income.
Okay, and what do you get from your mind, a yes or a no?
Well, yes, it's logical.
Yes. Okay. Right. Now, I want you to, let's just get you anchored into your heart space. So open the best way to get into your heart space is to do a couple of things. One is to place your focus there, and the second is to change your physiology so that you open up that area. So like when I'm like this, and I'm down like that, I'm in defensive mode because my chin is blocking my throat and my shoulders. I'm trying to protect all my vital organs. We see dogs do this, and we're the same as humans. And so when you do that, you close your heart space, right? And you're in defensive protective mode. So tuning into your heart space, you want to pull your shoulders back, you want to put your head up, and you want to breathe deeply into your heart space. And I want you to say the same statement and see what answer you get.
Okay. And now I forget how I started the statement. It's it's in my best interest.
Correct.
Yeah. It's in my best interest to go back to work to supplement my income.
And sometimes you don't get a clear read. And to help clear the read, you can put your hand on your heart space, right? And that really anchors your attention, and you can re-say the statement again.
It's in my best interest to return to work to supplement my income.
Yes or no?
It kind of feels like a yes, which I wasn't expecting.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So your heart is saying that it's in an alignment with your head. Okay, now go down to your solar plexus area, to where your gut is. And so draw your attention down to that and sort of sit upright. Breathe deeply into your stomach area a couple of times. And then settle your focus into your solar plexus or your gut area, and repeat the same statement.
It's in my best interest to return to work to supplement my income. It feels okay.
It feels okay.
And again, I wasn't really expecting that.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So you have alignment with your 3 centers, which you weren't expecting. So what is the noise that's going on in your mind? Because there's some chatter that's going on that's running a whole lot of interference around that alignment.
Well, I just kind of feel like it's not something I really wanted to do, but I think behind that probably is like fear of losing what I'm trying to build otherwise, for one thing.
Correct. So the thing to do is, you've got alignment around your 3 hearts, around your 3 intelligence centers, and sometimes the shortcut sometimes is to just do head and heart. And when you get a different answer between head and heart, then I definitely always go to the intuition. And because the intuition is the seat of knowing, and the more you can tap into your intuition, the more you make you lead your life from a sense of knowing, which is very different to making decisions. When you have a sense of knowing, there's no decision to be made, right? So what you can actually do as a result of this process is anchor into the knowing that you have alignment with all 3 centers. So maybe the how is actually getting in the way. And you got to get out of the how and back into the wow. So it's more around, your mind knows, and logically it needs to follow your heart and your intuition. But your reactive mind is just throwing out all this noise. So what we need to do is to bring, and this is kind of part of the repurposing, is it needs to realize it's a command center. So it's got to fall in line. And the way to do that realignment, it's saying a yes, but it's still giving off. It's like, if you're sitting around a table trying to make a collaborative decision, and everyone's sort of going arms crossed, yes. And then they don't air any grievances at the table, but as soon as they're out the door, they're all like, and white-anting the decision, right? So really what you've got to do is create the evidence that the mind needs for it to calm down. Okay. And this is kind of one of the ways we repurpose it, is we create the evidence. And one of the easiest ways to create evidence for the mind, so that it settles down and falls into place, into line, is to write, link to, for you to do an exercise. We call it a linking exercise. And it's like, okay, by me going back and earning income in a traditional sense rather than my transformative sense, like supplementing it, how does that benefit my transformative business? Right? And so you do this linking, and what you're actually doing is, it's like lacing up a shoelace. Part of your mind is like the shoelaces are all out, and it's like it's not all tethered together in alignment, you know? So it's the linking exercise goes, okay, so mentally, like if you go through the different areas of life, mentally, by going back to supplement your income, how does that help you? You know, how does that help your mind? What does it give you? And you might say, okay, well, it takes some of the pressure off. Okay, it silences some of my fears, financial fears, right? And then you might go to, you know, a different part of your life, which might be, because there's, you know, 8 areas of our lives. Yeah, so mental, emotional. You might say, okay, how does this help me emotionally? By going back and supplementing my income. Does anything come to mind for you?
Well, I think it eases the fear, or like you were just saying, you know, about taking away some of the worry about, you know, income, like survival. So, yeah, it does elevate your emotion, I think.
Yes.
You know, to know that you're doing that.
Yeah. Okay. So it might help balance out some of the emotions. And it's interesting, you know, I think the purpose of worry, this is kind of interesting, is to make us feel like we're doing something.
That's a good point.
So instead of investing our effort and energy into the worry, which makes us believe that we're actually doing something because we care so deeply about it, we're worrying.
Right.
And I'm not trying to make a mockery of anyone or any way in this. I'm just trying to show an alternative view of what worry is, right? Instead of we can divert or repurpose the energy that we put into worry, which is repurposing our mind, into some constructive action.
Two things you said. I think the linking part of that exercise is really good. You know, for anyone having to make a decision that they feel torn about, and also the worry part. Yeah, it does, because it runs constantly. So it does keep you busy. And you're right, it probably, you know, tricks you into thinking you're doing something useful. When you're busy trying to solve the problem, when you're really actually going deeper down into it. As you were talking about the mind and the heart, it made me think of when you were saying, and we do have a comment I'm going to read in a minute. You talking about using the word heartfulness rather than mindfulness.
Yes.
And so I think that's a really good thing. So I'm going to read the comment, and then maybe you can talk about that, because I like that saying.
Yeah, so do I.
Lori is saying, I had an affirmation about what kind of writing to do. My 3 centers said, she's a writer. My 3 centers said, it's all creative writing.
Yeah.
And then she says, Ray wrote that. So, okay. So 3 centers, and he does different types of writing.
Yeah.
So very interesting that all 3 centers had creative writing.
Yeah. So sometimes it's just, it is silencing the noise of the mind. And the mind, because it's logical, it needs evidence. So I'm all into, you know, we have these, it keeps a scorecard and it has its own little evidence list. But sometimes to settle it, we need to collect different evidence. So that linking exercise is, and I do that, like depending on how far apart I feel my mind, how splintered my mind feels, will depend on how many items I write. Sometimes I'll write 50 reasons, 50 benefits. so that my shoelaces of my mind are well and truly knitted like that. There's no wiggle room. And it's really incredible when you do that linking exercise. By the time you've finished, you're so revved up. Like you are so inspired.
Well, and I think the linking exercise part of it too helps, because until we start using all three centers and get comfortable with using our intuition and our heart as intelligence centers, you still have that trust issue. Like you might come
Yes.
out of it saying, oh, gee, all three centers say that, but I don't really feel like that's right. I don't think I
Yeah.
can really trust what I'm getting.
Yes.
And, so I think there's that trust to
Yes.
build in there. And, so I like the linking. I can see
Yes.
where that would
Yes.
be a good step, needed step in that process.
Totally agree, Nathan. And I think sometimes what it's showing is that there's a false fear hanging in the background, and so sometimes you can ask yourself, you can ask your mind, okay, what is the false fear? What's the fear?
Mm-hmm.
And can we use you as a guinea pig again? Sorry for putting you on the hot seat.
That's okay.
So is it okay? Can you share a fear?
Well, in relation to what we were just talking about with the job, I think I already said part of it is I feel like, then I won't have the energy to put towards what I really want to do.
Okay.
Which is the thing that gives me the most energy.
Yes.
I feel like my energy will be drained.
Right.
And I think there's just that fear, like, can I do it? What will I do? What will be the right thing to
Yes.
choose? That type of
Yes.
thing. So
cool. So the second part that you just talked about, am I going to do the right thing? Sometimes we have to do the wrong thing to find out what the right thing is. Okay. But that also comes back to what you were saying before about trust, right? And the stronger you get, you can tap into the other two intelligence centers. The more you can do that, the stronger those connections come, the more you will start moving and taking action from a space of knowing rather than having to make a choice or a decision, which is just, that's when you're in flow zone, because and the thing to do is to think about times when you've been in that and to re-anchor into the energy of what that felt like. Because that will help you tap into it more. So coming back, sorry, my brain just has had a little. It's just had a little brain snap. So I was asking you about the fear. All right, and then so you had a fear around you'll be too tired or you won't have enough energy for your passion project or for your passion, for what really lights you up. So when you have a false fear, the easy way to rebalance the scorecard, because what happens is you sort of end up down here. The fear puts you down here and the fear's up here. So you can either jump on the fear, which is not always the nicest thing to do, or you can rebalance by this. And the way we rebalance by this is collecting evidence contrary to the fear. So I would then suggest for you to, and again, people can journal on this, or some people just need to think about it and it shifts their energy. But, is to identify where you have done something that you've had to do and still had energy for what really lights you up. And so you just collect evidence and start a new evidence list that disproves or dispels the false fear.
I do keep a good evidence journal, and that's a good way to keep building. So I like using the word evidence and thinking of it in that way. So that's a really good exercise for anyone who tunes in at any time, because I think we're all, find ourselves in that situation where we have to make a choice that kind
Yeah.
of seems overwhelming or difficult, or we feel like we know what we have to do, but we don't want to do it. That, that type of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
You were going to talk about mindfulness,
Yes.
the
And
word
heartfulness.
mindfulness as opposed to heartfulness.
Yes. I agree. So I find it kind of interesting that, people talk about this big movement around mindfulness, which I think is wonderful. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. I'm not poo-pooing mindfulness. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And I think the benefits from it are really incredible. But when you actually look at all the activities that are mindfulness, and I always think, why did they label it mindfulness when really you actually want it mind emptiness? We don't need any help getting our minds full. Like it's kind of interesting. And just as a sideline, it's we have like our conscious minds. Our conscious minds have a processing rate of 2,000 bytes per second, right? Which seems like a lot until you understand that our subconscious mind processes at 400 billion bytes per second. And
Wow.
we try and jam everything in our conscious mind, the frontal lobe here. It's like, and we just jam it full, right? And really, we have this amazing connection. Everything is being stored in our subconscious mind. But most of the time, we don't understand that we have this amazing storage capacity, and it's a wonderful process capacity. And when you tap into your intelligence centers in your heart and your intuition, they're the things that trigger and help you bring back and recall and remind and all of that. So there's a whole trust equation that goes on as well when you let go of jamming everything into your conscious mind. Because how many times do you try and hold so much in that frontal lobe, and this
Mm-hmm.
area starts hurting, you get a headache, and then your mind just freezes or whatever, and it's like having too many. It's like not having enough bloody random RAM on your computer, and all your programs freeze. And we have that happen all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, mindfulness, so it should be mind emptiness, but it's forgetting that. The mindfulness part, all of those techniques are actually taking you out of your head and into your heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And so the mindfulness movement really should be called heartfulness, because you're actually getting out of mind and into heart, or into the energy space of heart. And, the mind can't rebalance the mind. The heart, which is the harmonizer, can only do that. And there's so much wonderful research coming out right now, Naven, around, the ability for the heart to actually harmonize. And that's why meditation is so good, because the breathing actually anchors you and realigns your chakras and anchors you back into your heart space without you even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting. I go heartfulness, because that's really what it is.
I was just reading this past week, but I don't remember the numbers, but it's on the research end, and it was talking about the electromagnetic field around the heart and how strong that is. I think you and I were mentioning before the work that the Heart Math Institute
Yes.
does. And that's a good place for anyone who's interested in finding
Yes.
out more to just look up, because they put out numbers,
Yes.
like that all the time. And it's really interesting to think about it.
It
And
is.
in that regard, and how strong it is, and what an
Yes.
influence it could play in our lives if we
Yeah.
need to, go into the heart space.
Yeah. And I think we've all experienced the power of when the open heart space of our
Mhm.
own. When you open your heart and you have those amazing experiences where you feel full of love and joy and peace, and everything is just, you almost feel like your heart's going to explode. It's a bit like, oh, can I actually tolerate this? But you feel that real I call it the blissness of the isness, it's when you are just so open and expansive, and you have that in moving moments, and it could be with a child, it could be out in nature, it could be with the passing of someone. It's activated in so many different times. But everyone, I think, has, most people have experienced that open-hearted, really moving space. And when that happens in a collective, in community, or with a gathering, you feel the electricity in the air.
Mm-hmm.
You, like, my hairs are standing on end now talking about it. And you just feel the multiplier and the magnitude and the expansion is just so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful. And when you experience those moments, I don't think people know what those moments are, so they don't attach or don't know how to interpret them. But
Mm-hmm.
that is the power. That's the multiplier. You hear about people 10xing stuff. Friggin' 10x open-heartedness. Who cares about 10xing when you live by numbers? How many views do I get? How many likes do I get? What do I weigh?
Mm-hmm.
What's my IQ? What's my bank account? What's my number that I live at? What is my address? So many people spend so much time living by numbers.
Right. And something else that you and I had talked about was titles or labels when we live by those. And I think it's really hard to get, to get that past your thinking mind, because that in general society, it's really important, your title, everybody at work wants a better title. Everybody's working to climb the ladder, but it's not just in the corporate setting. It's really in every single, organization or activity that you do. There's that, you want the next step, you want the recognition. We're so trained to do that, because otherwise, why are we participating in anything if we're not going to get noticed or we're not going to get a title? And so it's really interesting to think about it in that way. And you were talking about how that keeps us from our, maybe knowing our truth.
Yeah. No, but I think there's a really easy model that can explain this, that I'd love to share with people. It's and some people may have heard about it before. It's the be, do, have model. And if you had a piece of paper, draw a little circle in, a small circle, and put the word be in that, and then draw another circle around that, and that's your do, and then your outer circle is your have. I'd actually like to, that's how the model is drawn, but I'd like to actually reverse the circle, which I will do in a different conversation, and I think that's a different teaching. But and so what happens is we can use the be, do, have model is one of my favorite models, but I'm going to use it in this term in terms of identity. So I like to, so when I talk about identity or id, in the Latin sense of it, that's the Latin word for ego, right? How we identify and define ourselves. I'm not talking about how, someone being egotistical or something like that. So I'm talking about self-identity. And we go through a progression. When we go through that awakening or the consciousness, or whatever you want to call that journey, spirituality, there's so many different, versions, self-actualization, there's so many different words. But we start our self-definition from the outer circle, the have, the having. And you see this with children. Their identity is an extension of what they're holding in their hands. You take the toy away, they cry. You think that it's because they want what they are, but it's actually because their identity is like, they're not separate from their mothers. Their toys, the sticks, the worm, the book, whatever is an extension of who they are. That's part of their identity. And as adults, we have that, we grow with that. I drive a particular car. I have a particular car. I have a particular address. I have a particular job. I have particular types of clothes. They might be branded. They might be from Target. I have a particular look. So our haves define us. And then as we evolve, we realize, wow, time comes into play. And so the definition moves from just having to doing. How do I spend my time? Well, I used to be a chartered accountant. I used to be an auditor with Price Waterhouse. And then I became a strategist, and then I became a facilitator, and then I became a coach, and now I am a nomad, and now I'm a volunteer, and I'm a house sitter, and that's all my doing. That's what defines me as well. But to me, the most important part is who we be. What is the essence of you? And it took me a long time to understand that. And I don't think it has to take a long time. It just took me a long time. And I would love to shorten that experience for people, because who you are at an essence level, like I know, and this might sound corny to some people, but I know the essence of me is love. I know that I'm a big love bug, and love and light is my true essence, the love that is me, and it comes through everything I do, So that's part of my essence. Part of my other essence is authenticity and truth. And so I cannot not say the truth of what I see in a situation. I cannot not be authentic in the moment. I cannot not be authentic with my emotions. And they are my true essences. They are my gifts. And that's who I be. And when I first started my journey, when I was in corporate, I defined myself by my doing and my having. And I didn't even know there was a B. And it's interesting because I thought the B is the little circle. So now I actually want to invert that and make the B the bigger piece. But the big penny drop for me this year, Naven, was, and I only just got it this year, sometimes I'm a slow learner, was that all of my having and doing now is an expression of who I be. Whereas before, my having and doing was defined first, and one day I woke up in corporate with a hollow. I had a hollow. I had no B, and it was kind of weird. So I'd created my identity I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but in an arse about way, Whereas now, when I understand my true essence of who I am and what makes me me, my uniqueness, my essences, I can now see how that is expressed through my doing and my having, right? And so the free person, the free-spirited aspect of me, which is a core part of my essence, is why I do, and that's why I do nomad. I don't have a fixed address. That's why I house sit, and that's why I choose not to have much, because I want the freedom. I don't need the having. In fact, I see that clutters who I am, and I don't want to be cluttered. I want to step into the full potency of who I am in terms of my essences. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's very well said.
So
I really like that. So now we're getting the echo back. Sorry if you can hear that. I don't know what causes it. I do want to read from Ray again. He said, "Wonderful program." So,
thank you.
And I think anyone watching this later, they're going to get so much from it because of the actual little exercises, that we did with me as guinea pigs. I think that I know for me, when I'm watching something or trying to learn something, if I actually see it in action, or to incorporate something.
Yeah.
We are past the half hour, and we didn't even get to start talking about your human navigation project. So I
Oh,
think that we're definitely going to have you back, Jenny,
I'd love to.
because I'm sure that anyone who watches this is going to want to hear more and
Yeah.
get some of these really good processes and tips because they're very valuable. So I
Oh,
want to thank you so much for joining us. And I want to
thank
mention to the viewers that next week there is no show because of the Thanksgiving holiday in the United States here.
you. Hmm.
So good time of year to give thanks.
Hmm.
And when we return the Thursday after on December 2nd, my guest will be Adrienne Lee, the wandering art historian. And
Okay.
she's a delight to talk with too. So I'm sure everyone will want to join in for that. So thanks to everyone who listens now or tunes in later. And
Yeah.
please like and subscribe if you're drawn to do so. And thank you, Jenny, so much. This was such a valuable episode. And I hope you'll come back and join us again.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. And yeah, share your thoughts and insights on what lands for you and, give it a go and let us know in the comments below. Hey, it rhymes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Jenny will see those. So feel free to comment even if you're joining in later.
Yeah, I'd love to see. So thank you, Nathan. Really enjoyed it. The time
Thank
flew.
you. And thank everyone for joining in.
Yeah. Bye.